Hello and welcome to the Vivid webinar for today of Reach Your DevOps Goals with Integrated Solutions. Next slide. This webinar is brought to you by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And today it's hosted by me, Bernard Chimshak. I'm the Ohio chapter leader and TQA SIG leader and the Vivid director heading the education chair. Next slide. Today's speakers are Ravi Soni. He's a Chief Technology Officer for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and Tom Krall, who's also Chief Technologist and DevOps for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Next slide. All right, some basic housekeeping for this webinar. This session is live and it's being recorded. The recording is going to be available to all Vivid members. You'll get that information here as we go through. It'll be put onto the Vivid website as well, so as a recording, and you're going to be receiving an email with the link to how to get there. The session Q&A is going to be done at the end, and if you notice, please just type the questions into the questions pane, not into the chat, but into the questions pane itself. Next slide. All right, the webinar control panel, if you notice, is up in the upper right-hand corner. You can toggle to view it between full screen or window mode, and you can expand or close any of the windows on there, such as the questions and chat there. And do type in all your questions. They all will be stacked up, and we're going to answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to go through some quick polling questions. There's 5 of them, so please interact with those. Which area of the organization do you represent? Just choose between architecture, development, operations, quality assurance testing, or other. Just give it here a few seconds for us to answer, and then we'll wrap it up with what the results are of this and move on to the next. Okay, let's see what they are. All right, looks like the top one we have quality assurance and testing, so at 37%, with the lowest being operations at 6%. Okay, next. Okay, what is your current state of DevOps in your organization? Do you do it for more than a year? Have you started within the last few months? Planned in the next few months? Planned next year? Or not planned at all? Or maybe never heard of it? I know here at where I work at Progressive Insurance, we've been doing it a little over a year. Okay, we're just going to give it a few more seconds. Okay, go ahead and close that one out. Okay, so it looks like about a third of us, which is the largest group here, has been doing it for more than a year. And the smallest is planned for next year at 9%. So that seems to be pretty typical with the webinars I've done on these. So, okay. What areas do you experience the most pain? Check all that apply. Planning and requirements, development, testing, deployment and release, or operations. Okay, we're seeing the results come in here, what people are choosing. Yeah, it looks pretty much like what I got too. Okay, let's close that one out. All right, so pretty well split between testing and planning for planning and requirements for your second choice. Your first one was deployment and release at 53%. The least amount of that you're having it with pain is in operations. So that looks pretty good. Next. All right, what are your perceived challenges in adopting DevOps in your organization? Please select one if it's your culture, processes, tools, or other. Okay, let's close that one out. It's interesting seeing the results on that. Processes was catching up real quicker and almost beat out culture, but it's number one is culture with 7% saying then other is being where they're at. Okay, next slide. What is your main objective for DevOps? Is it quality? Is it velocity? Or other? Okay. As the results are coming in, that looks good. All right, let's close that one out. All right, so the number one is velocity, which you do get a lot there, so that's great. And the least one there is other, coming in at 9%. Okay, next slide. I want to thank you all for taking the time to do the polling questions. I know it can get tedious sometimes with them, but that helps out the speakers as well to be able to make sure that this is going to have content in it that you are going to like to hear. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Tom, I believe.
Thanks, Bernard, and thank you for everyone for attending the call today. Today, there are numerous CIO and IT level agendas that are driven due to the accelerated pace of change in IT and software-based business disruptions. Everywhere we look, we see examples of a concerted effort to become more lean and agile in delivering software, to deliver applications faster and more apps working in concert to deliver innovation. Also, there's a rapid push to leverage the vast potential of the digital platform, or what IDC calls the third platform, built on the foundation of mobile, social, cloud, and big data. To use these technologies to deliver new ways of delivering service, engaging customers, driving action and outcome. Layer on top of these agendas and trends the shift in expectation that IT is going from a cost center to a business driver. IT now has that seat at the business table, but with that comes great responsibility. IT not only has to become the engine of innovation, but deliver faster and uphold the brand by providing an amazing user experience. In order to compete in the digital economy, business depends on their IT organization to provide the best digital platform. But many of the current processes and tools are not easily adapted to deliver the speed and quality that is required. Organizations have to challenge and adapt from the large monolithic release to quick, focused, and continuous application updates. Today's application delivery is full of obstacles and challenges. Lack of insight of needs tends to drive kitchen sink type requirements. We plan releases that are too big, too complex, and take far too long to finish. This increases WIP, or ongoing work in progress. Often there's no systematic build or integration processes, and many tests are still manual that cause increased latency or incomplete test coverage. This then tends to drive a high number of defects that require rework. Poor confidence in the test results increase risk release mentality, or the need to feel the drive to test everything in production. Information security and compliance are typically engaged late in the process, causing delays in reworks. Patch in production leads to snowflake or one-off systems. This one-way flow tends to lead to a poor user experience, or we deliver applications too late, driving down revenue. So what are the main latencies in the application delivery chain? Long wait times to set up dev and test environments due to ever-increasing complexity. Manual and error-prone deployments between different stages. Error-prone manual handoffs between processes and even sometimes within a process. Last but not least, each IT team is often siloed and may not communicate and collaborate as well as they need to. And as a result, there's a lack of transparency in the end-to-end process. The IT teams need to collaborate, share, and trust each other to achieve more. By driving improvement areas within each phase of the application lifecycle through continuous integration, testing, deployment, and assessment, you start to turn a problematic release process into an application delivery pipeline. So what does IT need to do? Let's imagine IT as a factory that needs to deliver a steady flow of quality applications to the business. IT organizations need to reduce or eliminate waste in their supply chain by automating processes. IT needs to operate like an app factory and treat the application delivery chain like a supply chain. Communication and collaboration across teams are keys to successfully deliver the factory's goals, like quality, delivery time, and product releases. Like a supply chain, the application delivery needs to be automated as much as possible, low latency between handoffs, and keep visibility along the entire delivery chain. Once you have the application factory in place, now you can start to measure how the factory is running through continuous monitoring and assessment, and improve the processes in the factory as needed. You can start to track your IT organization's key KPIs, such as deployment frequency, deployment success rate, speed of development, mean time to restore services, security test pass-fail status, and build frequency verification. So where do you begin to get an integrated DevOps solution? There are 4 main areas to focus on to get started. Identify your organization's culture and people, and plan for any potential disruptions from change. Increase automation. Automate everything you can. Accelerate routine tasks, ensure repeatability, and reduce errors. Reduce latency through implementation of continuous integration and testing, security, and deployment. Finally, increase visibility through continuous assessment. Monitor and measure everything. Provide consistent feedback loops. Improve and iterate through the process. Then you can start to visualize your application factory as layers from the application lifecycle process, a set of continuous everything solutions, and the combination of vendor, custom, and open source tools. Once your processes, solutions, and tools are integrated, the organization can start to realize the increased speeds in development and delivery while optimizing costs. The HPE DevOps operating model holistically looks at the why, what, how, and with what in the areas of organizational structure, learning and information, processes, systems, measurements, and culture. To help organizations visualize how an integrated solution can benefit and be realized, we offer 3 separate reference architectures that can be created and stood up for use by IT teams to help them identify the steps and processes they may deploy. These reference architectures are made up of both HPE and third-party and open source tools that are integrated together. Today we will demo the DevOps reference architecture and take you through a detailed set of use cases. The 3 main use cases we will show today are continuous integration and testing with security, continuous release and deployment, and continuous assessment. I would now like to introduce Ravi Soni to take us through the demo.
Ravi, if you're there, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. I was talking for a while. Yeah, I'm so sorry. So I was saying that as per the polls today, it is fairly evident that the people, process, and technology challenges are hindering adoption of DevOps in organizations. And today I'm going to show you that how integration of tools and processes for both dev and ops, including testing and requirements, can overcome those challenges. In addition to that, how do you enable visibility through integrated tool set, which will also reduce your risk of adoption from the people perspective. So as Tom pointed out, we have 3 reference architectures, and we have within DevOps, we have 4 reference platforms. 2 of these reference platforms are end-to-end tool and process integrations, one for Java and one for .NET. The .NET reference implementation uses VMware for virtualization and HP Codar and Chef for provisioning of infrastructure. The Java reference implementation uses Docker containers for virtualization and continuous deployment. I'll be showing a bit of both of these today. The third reference implementation is for continuous visibility and continuous assessment. It helps you get a window into your continuous improvement initiatives for DevOps, providing visibility with KPIs and metrics, and with drill down capabilities. The implementation uses HP IT Business Analytics tool, which uses big data analytics for consolidation and aggregation of data from diverse data sources. The fourth reference implementation is for DevOps for mobile applications, which I'm not going to show today. But this uses HP Mobile Center to give you the ability to develop, test, and deploy applications, simulating hundreds of different mobile devices and simulating configurable data networks, network loads, and user virtualization. The end-to-end DevOps reference implementations show how do you integrate and automate different IT processes, such as change, configuration, and release management into your application lifecycle stages. The reference implementations implement best practices such as everything as code, infrastructure as code, versioning artifacts, automated testing, measure continuously to help you implement DevOps as a shared enterprise service for standardization of processes across the enterprise to increase visibility, increase collaboration, increase compliancy with a connected infrastructure that can support both build and run for bimodal IT for traditional and new such as fluid resources and microservices. The integration of tools and processes is extremely critical, I would say again, to help you reduce your cycle time, reduce latency, increase your release velocity, increase quality, improve employee productivity, reduce employee turnover, increase reliability, repeatability, and predictability to help you reduce your cost, increase your revenue, and reduce your overall risk posture. So let me quickly walk you through the different DevOps stages and how do you integrate the processes in your DevOps deployment pipeline. But before I begin, I want to say that the tools depicted here are reference implementation only. And even though we are HP, our services division is tool agnostic and would help you implement enterprise DevOps services, integrating these processes with your existing tools and with the tools of your choice, and also customized to your existing processes as well. So let's start with the from left, starting with plan and define. So at the plan and define stage, change and release management are integrated to provide visibility to operations that integrate with ALM to implement traceability between requirements and test cases so that you can implement risk and impact-based testing. At the develop stage, user stories are integrated within the developer IDE so that the developer knows what tasks are assigned to him or her. Also, it gives the Agile manager the ability to trace what lines of code were changed for this specific user story, and thus implementing end-to-end traceability between requirements, code, and unit test cases. And what we've seen in a lot of organizations, traceability is missing. Because of that, they're not able to increase the release velocity. On the develop side, again, we recommend test-driven development or behavior-driven development practices with automated unit test generation with our LeanFT tool to increase developer productivity, and also integrating static code analysis in the IDE and test environments so that security vulnerabilities and code issues are caught at the source and not found later in production. And the service virtualization, I would say the dependency on other applications and external interfaces you might have seen in your enterprise is drastically slowing down your speed of development and releases. And you have to struggle to synchronize various teams to a common release date. So implementing and integrating a service virtualization capability will help you reduce those dependencies, allow you to develop and test and release your application independently in small batches. So moving to the build stage, the key part here is integration with CMDB, as well as automated orchestration through Jenkins, or you can say Electric Commander or Bamboo, and then implementing a common repository such as Nexus and Artifactory across the enterprise. At the deploy stage, for traditional virtualization paths such as VMware deployment are managed with HP Codar. HP Codar is a single tool available in the market for visual topology modeling, visibility into a deployment pipeline, and infrastructure as code stored as JSON files, along with each build artifact in the Nexus or Artifactory repository. At the test stage, in the end, ALM is integrated with Agile Manager for end-to-end traceability, Jenkins for kicking off automated functional unit and performance testing. Another process in application development is test data provisioning, which is fairly missing in the enterprises today. And we see the application development team spending many critical sprint hours chasing test data. And even when it's available, it does not cover all scenarios. And sometimes real user production data is found in test environments. And we recommend auto and self-service provisioning of test data with an enterprise-grade test data management for developers and testers for unit, functional, and performance testing integrated into your deployment pipeline. And on the later stages, when you deploy to staging and production, the key is how do you integrate your change and release management practices into the release pipeline so that you can increase your release velocity, traceability, and auditability. And in the production phase, integration of service management tool, which I would say with defect management is key, so that the software related incidents can automatically create defects in ALM, which can be flowed into backlog or worked upon instantly if you follow lean practices for workflow management of application maintenance. So in addition to the continuous feedback loop is enabled from operations to dev, with sharing of practices, production logs, user behavior for continuous improvement and feedback. So with that, I'll go to the demo. Give me 1 sec. Let me switch. So the demo which I'm going to show you today, I have only very short time to show the demo. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 different model offices, one for Java, one for .NET, and one for continuous visibility. So the end-to-end demo typically takes around 4 to 5 hours, and so I'm going to select certain specific scenarios from those use cases and show you those specific areas. So let's start with plan and define. Within this, I'm going to this covers 4 typical use cases. One is creating a project and managing your projects in portfolio management tool, managing your schedule, managing the resources, and then triggering of sprint or feature into a agile management product. And how do you create stories? This is a specific use case I'm going to cover today. How do you create and manage stories in an agile management product? And the other 2 aspects of the use case is how do you create change requests from within the automated tools when you are initiating the product. So let's go into creating user stories. The actors today are a business user who's going to create a project in portfolio management tool, finalize requirements and planning, and then create user stories. So in the following slides, you'll see that I'm going through all the steps, but I'm going to demo only the Agile Manager user story step. So I'm going to skip this step. So here, I want to stress that the integration of CMDB for traceability into configuration management and integration with service management, your change management process for initiating and setting up those change requests early in the project lifecycle. One thing I want to say, this is really critical for visibility to operations, so the operations knows what's coming in the next release and what to expect for. So let's go into the how do you create a user story, and then how do you assign it to a specific developer. So I'm going to log into the Agile Manager tool, and within that, the first we start with a dashboard which is configurable and provides you visual indicators such as backlog, burn down chart, release velocity, and all. So we're going to go into the product backlog. And in the product backlog, we are going to add a user story, which is for this our very small application, which is an internet banking application. So the use case which I'm going to show you today is we're just going to change the label of on the login page. This is very simple use case. We are selecting the application which this use case belongs to. We are selecting the feature which this use case belongs to. In this case, this is authentication. And then we are going to select the priority of this use case, user story, sorry. And then we are going to assign 4 story points to this user story. So on the right, you see that we can see all the releases going on to, at this instant in time in your organization, and you can assign this user story to specific release depending on the capabilities of the team as well as the availability within the team. So we can drag and drop the user story to the specific release, and once it's assigned to a release, we can further assign to a sprint, and now we're going to assign to a current sprint, and then within a planning board, which is similar to a Kanban board, we can see which developer is working on which. Then we can assign this specific user story to a developer. So now we have assigned this story to the developer. Let's go into the developer IDE and see that can the developer see this user story within the IDE without leaving the IDE and work on it. So we are going to log into the developer IDE, activate the user story, and the developer checks out the code, writes the code, commits it, and checks it into the Git repository, as well as he or she is going to deactivate the user story and change the status of the user story within the IDE. So let's go into the developer IDE. So here the developer IDE I'm showing today you see on the right the user story is available within the tasks panel of the IDE. The developer activated the task. Now the developer is checking out the code. He's looking for the login page, and within the login page, I'm going to change the label of the login page to DevOps login. Now I'm done with my code. I'm going to check in my code to Git, as well as add a message to Jenkins that okay, you can start building right away as soon as I check in the code. You can configure this as per your current build management practices, but for now I'm just asking Jenkins to start building right away. So once I'm done with my code check-in, I'm going to update the status of the user story within the IDE that I'm done. So this will be reflected in Agile Manager, and the Scrum Master or the other people would know that I'm done with the user story. So this reflects in Agile Manager, and it will reflect in the product backlog also. With the code checked in, one thing I want to mention here is we stress static code analysis within the developer IDE using 45 or similar tools, so that the developer can catch those vulnerabilities within the IDE when he's developing code before it checks in the code, so that the security vulnerabilities do not flow into the production environment. So here I just clicked the 45 plugin in the IDE. Now the 45 would start scanning the code, and the results of that scan would be available in the 45 Security Center. So once I go into the 45 Security Center, I know that what is my report and what are the vulnerabilities if I created any. Now I can go down to the line level within this change file and see what vulnerabilities were created by my code check-in. And I can go to a specific line level and then go back into my IDE and change the code. One thing I want to mention here is that with our new tools, DevInspect, which is totally available within the IDE, the developer does not have to leave the IDE and follow static code analysis results. The developer can find the results within his IDE only. So that is security code analysis, static code analysis within the IDE. And next thing, if you see, once the developer commits the code, Jenkins listens to the event and starts the Jenkins pipeline. In the pipeline, first thing we do is update the CMDB for this new CI. We compile the code. Then again, in the Jenkins pipeline, we again scan the code, because this scan is going on the total code, not on just one developer. So this will show the entire team if they introduce any new security vulnerabilities into the code, if some developer did not do the static code analysis within the IDE. So once the static code analysis is completed, we compile the code within Jenkins, MS build in .NET or Maven, or if you're using other technologies like PHP or others, or it can follow your tools and process and then upload the compiled into code into artifact repository. From there, HP Coder would pick up the code and deploy into a test environment. So I'm going to skip these test cases and go straight into the HP Coder, where you can see that how the environments are modeled visually and deployed into a test environment. This is the power of dev and ops working together, so that within the sprint, when the user story is being defined and developers and testers are working on requirements and defining test cases, the ops guy would also be changing the environment as per the new feature if required. So let's go into the coder. We are going to the release pipeline and see what's in there for this specific release. So in this specific release, you will see I'm going to release 4.5, and in that I'm going into the deployments. Within the deployments, we're going to see how the environment was visually designed with the topology modeler. And in this topology modeling design capabilities within Coder, this is unique to the industry. Most of the tools like Chef and Puppet and all, they do not have this capability. So this helps you visually see what is currently deployed on that specific machine and what are the dependencies. And do I need to deploy any application monitors, any server monitors, any storage or other network monitors on the machine? And what other configurations, like if you are changing the JVM memory footprint, you can change it here instead of going to a server and changing it. The benefit of this is that all these changes are stored as a JSON file, which is infrastructure as code, along with that build file in the Nexus repository, so that all the things required for a specific build in past or present are stored together in one place, which gives you the capability of release on demand, whether the current release, or you can go back to your previous releases and see and click on a button and deploy those builds into an environment. This gives you the power to deploy not only within your static environments, which are typically there in enterprises, but also gives you the power to deploy with other providers such as like AWS or Azure, or within your hybrid cloud or public cloud environment. Also, if you have bare board machines coming into your environment, you can use the same tool to bootstrap, launch a VMware, and then deploy your SQL Server or web server, and then deploy your application on top of it. So let's move on. After the environment is created and application is deployed, next thing we do is trigger the automated functional test cases. I'm going to defer it a little bit later because I'll show you this capability in our Docker deployment, so that you get a feel of Docker as well. Next thing I'm going to show you is how do you use service virtualization within your development environment and test environment, so that you can activate or deactivate dependencies on your external environment. Hold on, let me go to the next one, sorry. And as I mentioned before, dependency on other applications typically reduce your ability to scale your Agile or DevOps adoption at an enterprise level, because now you're trying to synchronize all those other applications to a common release date. But by implementing service virtualization capabilities, you can reduce those dependencies by creating stubs, and so that the developer can code independent of those other external dependencies, and the testing can test without being dependent on their environments, and you can activate and deactivate the service virtualization capabilities within your Jenkins pipeline, because there's integration of service virtualization with Jenkins. So our application is two parts. One is Java and one is .NET. The .NET application, which is the investor application, is dependent on the Java application, which is internet banking application. So this simulates a real world scenario, and now we're going to simulate this external Java application with service virtualization stub, and activate and deactivate that during your development and test cycles. So let's go into it. I'm logging into the service virtualization portal, and here I see that I have one service which is simulated. This service is not activated yet, but when you go into the Jenkins pipeline for this .NET application, you will see that within that you can manage your service virtualization activation, deactivation within the pipeline, and then perform your deployment, your test, and then deactivate at the end once you're done. So now we activated it. So you see the status in service virtualization. It's simulating right now. So it means once the Jenkins kicked the pipeline, it's activated the stub, and now it is testing against the stub. And you see the two messages because we connected two tests against this external service. So it shows that when this service is simulating, two messages passed across this. So this capability can be leveraged within the IDE by the developer, within the test environments using a Jenkins pipeline, and deactivated for staging environments. This gives you a lot of power when you're trying to scale your Agile and DevOps to enterprise. So with that, I'll go to the release to staging environment. I will show you one quick thing here of integration of your change and release management within the Jenkins pipeline, so that before the system deploys the code into staging, it is looking for RFC. I would say whether this change request is approved in your service manager or not before it deploys it. So plus it also updates the configuration item in the configuration UCMDB, so that you can have traceability and auditability of what's going on and when what was this released. So if here I'm going to the CMDB and again back to Jenkins and show you that all these tools are integrated for service and change management, and to have end-to-end traceability with your IT, with your dev and ops, so that you have auditability and compliancy of processes, as well as the full integration of processes, so that dev and ops can have full visibility into each of their processes. So let's go to the Java module. Here, instead of using Coder, we are using Docker. So I assume that you all know Docker, so I'm not going to explain what Docker is today. But I'm going to show you the power of Docker and how it is integrated with Jenkins and how it is used to deploy your dev and test environments, as well as how do we automatically start your functional and performance test after we deploy to Docker. Here, like the Docker build was created for dev, and it is stored in the Docker registry. Because Docker goes so fast, it's really hard to capture those. You have to depend on command lines. And within Jenkins, also you have a command line output which will tell you what's going on right now. But the beauty of Jenkins is it also gives you links so that you can click on those links and go directly to the pipeline. And this is where I'm going right now. So here in the Jenkins pipeline, we have configured the Jenkins pipeline to run your performance test and your functional test automatically through ALM. And this is done using impact-based testing, so that for the specific feature the user story which we created, we are only activating those specific tests which are impacted by the user story. This shows the power of traceability within the organization. So I'm going to the, see what's going on, and here once Jenkins started compiling, it compiled and deployed the build using Codar. In this case, is Docker. It deployed the application into the Docker test environment. Now the Jenkins pipeline is running, asking ALM to run the functional test case. In this case, which is going to our internet banking application. And you can see simultaneously in Jenkins what's going on. And once you go back to your ALM, you can see the status of those test cases. In this case, if you look at line 2, which is number 48, you see the functional test cases passed. Now Jenkins is going to activate the performance test cases, which is using our HP load runner. So we can see the integrated report, and later on I'll show you that how this data is also captured at an enterprise level and made visible to different roles within the organization, so that your VP of apps can see what's going on in a specific project at a specific time, as well as your project manager and scrum master or your business analyst can see what's going on, what's the quality, what's the speed, what's the release velocity, and is there a predictability of my application. So Jenkins just activated the performance test case within the deployed Docker build, and now you see Jenkins also is putting the compiled code into the Nexus. And if it was a Codar pipeline, you will see here in the Nexus, along with the compiled build, you will see the infrastructure as code, the JSON file, which is mentioned previously. So all the artifacts for a specific build are kept together in the Nexus or Artifactory, so that it gives you the capability to do release on demand, as well as capability to deploy previous releases on demand to your environment. So that is the end of the use case for the automated functional performance test cases being activated through Jenkins pipeline, because the tools are end-to-end integrated. So that is the end of my 2 demos. Second, the last demo which I'm going to cover today is continuous visibility and continuous assessment. This uses our IT business analytics tool, ITBA, which uses big data underneath using Vertica to compile and aggregate data from different sources. So all the tools which you just saw today, from portfolio management to Agile Manager to your ALM to your Jenkins to your operations management, operation monitors like application monitors, server monitors, storage monitors, all the data is collected into the Vertica system and aggregated into those key scorecards, KPIs, and metrics, so that you can see instantly what is the current state of my organization, and the scorecards and the KPIs are designed specific for different roles, because not all roles relate typically to these KPIs. For example, the CEO might want to see the conversion of these into revenue and cost, while the CIO and the CTO would want to see the technical data. And at the LOB business owner level, they want to see for the specific application. So the 3 key, I would say, indicators of an application state are velocity, quality, and business value. That at what speed am I releasing my applications? What is the quality of my application based on the number of defects, and what's the business value I'm producing at what rate? So within the ITBA, you'll see we have different source scorecards, and each scorecard gives you red green, yellow kind of indicator, okay, am I doing good or bad? I'm not going to detail of these, but you can look at different metrics and KPIs for quality, speed of deployment frequency, as well as you can drill down from within this ITBA tool and see that which project was causing these issues, which release was causing the issues, which sprint was causing this issue, and what's going on wrong there. So that is the end of my demo today. So again, I would stress that the tools, if they're not integrated, would not be able to give you the power which is embedded in those tools to give you the capability to release at high velocity, at high quality, and reduce your overall risk. With that, I'll go back to the PowerPoint. Give me one sec. So Bernard, back to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Ravi. Tom, is there anything else further from you before we get into questions?
No, I just wanted to state for everyone that HPE also, we look at a couple different areas when it comes to DevOps, and especially around some of our service offerings. We focus in on the advice type of area where we work with clients specifically around what their needs are and what their goals are and implement workshops to uncover these and put together roadmaps, etc. We also run transformational type engagements where we actually work with clients to assist them to do continuous integration and testing and delivery and operations and get that set up within their organization. And then clearly we also help them manage that process ongoing through the implementation and utilization of some of the other features that we've shown here today.
Okay, great. Well, let's look at some of the questions here. And if you do have any questions right now, just please type them into the questions pane. If we don't have time to answer them today, they will be provided as answers on the Vivit website with the rest of the reference material for this webinar. Okay, we use Selenium for testing. Can we integrate with this tool?
Hey Bernard, this is Tom. Yeah, absolutely. There's hooks into the integrated platform that we showed that you can incorporate most any test tool depending upon what phase of the life cycle it's in. So clearly, if you're using Selenium as part of your development tests early on in the process, and you're able to integrate that in with your Jenkins infrastructure, and then we can then base reporting and the monitoring components off that. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Where is the best place to start implementing DevOps?
What I would say is each individual organization is different from where they're starting from now and where they are from what I would call a DevOps maturity model. So it's important for organizations to do that self-respective internally to identify where they are in the process, and then typically start at the low-hanging fruit. You know, some of the things around blocking and tackling are important to get started right away. Clearly, continuous integration is one of the most commonly adopted first phase in the DevOps process. That allows that process from developer check-in through the build and movement of the code into your asset repository to be automated, which is typically, for most organizations, a large problem area in terms of time and complexity. Then onto that, I would then start looking at the continuous testing part. So once you start the continuous integration, then the automated movement of that asset into a test environment, and the kickoff of automated tests against that. Typically, those are going to be, for most clients, the areas to start off on first.
Yeah,
Okay,
Tom,
great.
I would like to add one thing here. Because when we study different enterprises and when we engage with them, we have found out that each enterprise has different level of pain at different areas. In some cases, we have started with content integration. In some cases, we help them mature on automation testing. And in some cases, we started with content delivery. So we have a workshop, which you mentioned earlier, which is a one-day transformation workshop. It's a one-day journey. We walk them through the DevOps transformation and help them identify their pain points and challenges, and later on tie them to a brief roadmap and tell them, okay, these are the areas where you can start with your DevOps initiative.
Absolutely.
And information about the workshop, I think, will follow in the follow-up email.
Absolutely. And typically also what we find is that no matter where the organization is on their roadmap, if you will, of DevOps, is that, the management of change that goes into an organization in terms of as processes change and as organizations' resources, their roles change slightly, there's a constant kind of need to understand what impact that has to the culture and to the various responsibilities within the organization. So that's typically also an area that most clients look at.
Okay, great. And also, just to mention about Discover 2016, we're less than a month away from this conference. It's out in Las Vegas. It's going to be the week of June 7th through the 9th. If you can join us out there, that'd be great. There's lots of things going on about DevOps, about everything, testing, performance, whatnot. So over 10,000 people attend this, including your C-level executives, IT directors, engineers, and HPE experts. They got a wonderful amount of different presentations that are put on. Vivid, your independent community, is putting on quite a few different breakout sessions, roundtables, and the like. So there's loads of things to do out there. I go to it every year. So it's always nice to meet everybody and see everyone out there and sharing what we're all doing across the organizations. And you can register now. There's an email link down on the bottom. Don't worry if you don't have to write that link down. We'll be sending out the presentation and other things to you so you have access to it. But you do get a discount with the using your Vivid membership. Okay, and we got time for one more question here. How long does it take to integrate the tools within an environment, typically?
So, Tom, let me take it. Because it depends on your existing tools if you want to use the tools which you currently have. So depending on the version of those tools, typically the latest versions integrate much easily. The older versions take a little more workarounds. But if you pick up the standard, our standard implementation, it would take 3 to 4 weeks max. And depending on your tools, it will take to 6 to 8 weeks max.
Okay, great. All right, next slide. All right, just want to thank everyone for this, and you're getting a short survey after this webinar ends here. You can go ahead and choose opt-in for more information from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Hewlett Packard Enterprise's site is pretty easy. It's www.hpe.com. And of course, your independent Vivid site is vivid-worldwide.org. All right, next slide.
That's the last one.
Okay, great. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Tom. It was a really informative webinar, and will be available onto the site. And if we didn't get to your questions, they too will be provided onto the Vivid website. You'll be getting an email with the link where you can find that information. Hope everybody here has a good day, and want to see you all at HP Discover. Thank you.